The scorching sun beat down mercilessly on the Naval Special Warfare training facility in Coronado, California. It was a day like any other on the sprawling military base, where the elite Navy SEALs honed their deadly skills. The shooting range echoed with the rhythmic crack of gunfire, a symphony of lethal precision that had become as familiar as breathing to those who walked these grounds. Colonel James Hawk Morrison stood with his arms crossed, his weathered face set in its characteristic scowl. At 52 years old, he had seen it all. 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq, and more classified operations than he could count on both hands. His chest bore rows of medals and ribbons that told stories of valor, sacrifice, and unwavering dedication to his country. The colonel was a legend in military circles. No, not just for his leadership, but for his supernatural ability with a rifle. His shooting records had stood unbroken for 15 years. The annual SEAL qualification trials were in full swing, and as usual, Colonel Morrison had been invited to observe and evaluate the new crop of candidates. These trials weren't just about passing a test. They were about proving you belonged among the most elite warriors on the planet. The shooting portion was particularly grueling, designed to push even experienced marksmen to their absolute limits. "Next candidate," bellowed Sergeant Major Rick Torres, his voice carrying across the range with practiced authority. He was a bear of a man, 6'4", with shoulders that seemed to fill doorways. His dark eyes scanned the waiting candidates with the intensity of a predator sizing up prey. What happened next would become the stuff of legend, whispered about in mess halls and training facilities around the world for years to come. From the line of waiting candidates, the figure stepped forward. But this wasn't the hardened warrior everyone expected. Instead, a boy who looked barely old enough to drive emerged from the group. He stood perhaps 5'6", with a lean frame that suggested he weighed no more than 130 pounds soaking wet. His sandy blonde hair was cut in a standard military buzz cut, and his blue eyes held an intensity that seemed incongruous with his youthful face. The range fell silent. Even the ongoing qualifications seemed to pause as heads turned to stare at the unlikely candidate. "What the hell is this?" Colonel Morrison's voice cut through the silence like a whip crack. He strode forward, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each purposeful step. "Torres, what's the meaning of this? Is this some kind of joke?" The boy stood at attention, his posture perfect, his gaze fixed straight ahead. He didn't flinch under the colonel's withering glare. "Sir, this is candidate number 2. His voice carried a note of uncertainty. "He's listed on the roster, sir. All his paperwork checks out." "Paperwork?" Colonel Morrison's laugh was harsh and bitter. He circled the boy like a shark, his eyes taking in every detail. "This isn't some summer camp, son. This is Navy SEAL qualification. Do you have any idea what that means? Do you understand that grown men, hardened warriors, wash out of this program every single day?" Ethan remained silent, maintaining his position of attention. His jaw was set, and his hands remained perfectly still at his sides. "How old are you, kid?" the colonel demanded, stopping directly in front of Ethan. At 6 feet tall, Morrison towered over the boy, using his physical presence to intimidate. 17, Sir, Ethan replied, his voice steady and clear. 18 next month, sir. A ripple of laughter spread through the assembled candidates and observers. Even some of the instructors couldn't suppress their smirks. A 17-year-old boy attempting SEAL qualification. It was absurd, it was laughable. 17, Colonel Morrison repeated, shaking his head in disbelief. "Let me guess. You saw a recruiting poster and thought it looked cool. Thought you'd play soldier for a day." His voice dripped with sarcasm. "Son, the men and women here have dedicated their lives to this. They've sacrificed more than you can possibly imagine. And you show up here looking like you just rolled out of your high school homeroom. Permission to speak, sir?" Ethan asked, his voice still remarkably calm. "Oh, this ought to be good," Morrison said, stepping back and crossing his arms again. "By all means, enlighten us." "Sir, I'm aware of what this program represents," Ethan began, his words measured and precise. "I'm aware of the standards, the expectations, and the legacy of the Navy SEALs. I wouldn't be here if I didn't believe I could meet those standards, sir." Another wave of laughter rippled through the crowd, louder this time. Some of the candidates were openly mocking the boy now. You believe you can meet these standards? Colonel Morrison's eyebrows shot up. Kid, the men here train for years before they even attempt qualification. They come from military backgrounds, from special forces, from combat zones. And you think you can just walk in off the street and compete with them? I don't think I can compete with them, sir, Ethan replied. And for a moment, Morrison thought the boy was finally showing some sense. But then Ethan continued, I know I can beat them, sir. The range exploded with derisive laughter and shouts. Even Sergeant Major Torres had to turn away to hide his grin. This kid had guts. You had to give him that. But he was delusional. Colonel Morrison's face turned an impressive shade of red. In his 15 years of conducting these evaluations, no one had ever shown such blatant, arrogant disrespect. Not to him, not to the program, and certainly not to the legacy of the Navy SEALs. Is that so? Morrison sighed, his voice dangerously quiet now. When he spoke in that tone, seasoned warriors knew to tread carefully. But Ethan either didn't recognize the danger or didn't care. Yes, sir, Ethan replied simply. Colonel Morrison turned to face the assembled crowd. His decision made. He was going to teach this arrogant little punk a lesson he'd never forget. He was going to humiliate him so thoroughly that he'd de-slink back to whatever suburban neighborhood he'd de-crawled out of and never think about the military again. All right, Candidate Cole, Morrison announced loudly, ensuring everyone could hear. I'll tell you what, since you're so confident, so certain of your abilities, I'm going to give you a special opportunity. He paused for dramatic effect. You're going to shoot the full qualification course. Right now, in front of everyone here. The laughter died down, replaced by an excited murmur. This was going to be entertaining. Watching this cocky kid fail spectacularly would be the highlight of the day. And just to make it interesting, Morrison continued, a cruel smile playing at his lips. If you fail to qualify, you don't just wash out. You leave here and you never, ever attempt military service again. You understand me? This is your one shot. Kid, your one and only chance to prove you're not. It's just another delusional teenager with more mouth than skill. I understand, sir, Ethan said without hesitation. Good, Morrison nodded. Torres, set up the course. Full qualification protocol. And I want everyone to watch this. Consider it a lesson in humility. As Sergeant Major Torres began organizing the shooting stations, Colonel Morrison leaned in close to Ethan, his voice low enough that only the boy could hear. I've seen 1,000 kids like you, he said quietly. All confidence and no substance. The military isn't a video game, son. Out there, in the real world, your overconfidence gets people killed, gets good people killed. So I'm going to enjoy watching you fail. I'm going to enjoy it immensely. Ethan met the colonel's eyes without flinching. With respect, sir, you've never seen anyone like me. The shooting range fell into organized chaos as Sergeant Major Torres and his team prepared for what everyone assumed would be a brief, embarrassing demonstration. The full Navy SEAL shooting qualification wasn't just difficult. It was designed to be nearly impossible for anyone who was already an expert marksman with years of experience. The course consisted of multiple stages, each designed to test a different aspect of shooting proficiency under increasingly challenging conditions. It wasn't enough to be accurate. You had to be fast. It wasn't enough to be fast. You had to be accurate under stress. And it wasn't enough to do either of those things. You had to do them repeatedly, without fail, without error, while exhausted and under pressure. Listen up, Torres shouted, his voice cutting through the chatter. The assembled crowd fell silent immediately. For those of you who haven't seen this before, I'm going to explain the qualification course that Candidate Cole will be attempting. He gestured toward the first shooting station. A simple bench rest position with targets at 50 yards. Stage 1. Precision shooting. 10 rounds, 10 targets. Maximum time, 2 minutes. Minimum score to qualify. 9 hits in the kill zone. This tests basic marksmanship fundamentals. A murmur ran through the crowd. Even this first stage eliminated about 10% of qualified candidates. The kill zone was small, roughly the size of a paper plate, and at 50 yards, even the slightest error in breathing or trigger control would result in a miss. Stage 2, Torres continued, moving to the next station. Rapid target acquisition. 20 targets, at varying distances from 25 to 75 yards. You have 3 minutes to engage all targets. Minimum qualification. 16 hits in the kill zone. This tests your ability to quickly identify and engage multiple threats at different ranges. The difficulty was ramping up. Now the shooter had to constantly adjust their aim, accounting for different distances while maintaining speed. It was like a deadly game of whack-a-mole, except the moles shot back in real combat situations. Stage 3. Movement and shooting. Torres gestured to a course laid out with barriers and obstacles. You'll move through this course while engaging targets at unknown distances. You have 5 minutes. 20 targets. Minimum 16 hits in the kill zone. You must maintain tactical movement, use cover properly, and engage while moving. Any failures in safety protocol or tactical judgment result in immediate disqualification. This was where most candidates started to struggle. Shooting while stationary was one thing. Shooting while your heart was pounding, your legs were burning, and you were trying to remember to breathe properly was entirely different. Stage 4. Stress shooting. Torres's voice took on a harder edge. This is where we separate the real warriors from the wannabes. You'll be physically exhausted by this point. We're going to make it worse. 40 push-ups, 40 sit-ups, 40 mountain climbers. Then you'll engage 15 targets at various ranges in 2 minutes. Minimum 12 hits in the kill zone. Your hands will be shaking. Your vision will be blurred with sweat. Your muscles will be screaming, and you still have to make the shots. Even some of the experienced candidates shifted uncomfortably. They'd all failed stage 4 at some point in their training. It was designed to simulate the physical exhaustion of combat, while still requiring precise, deadly accuracy. And finally, Torres paused, letting the tension build. Stage 5. The Colonel's Challenge. All eyes turned to Colonel Morrison, who stepped forward with a satisfied smirk on his face. Stage 5 is special, Morrison explained. It's not part of the standard qualification. It's my own personal edition, designed to test whether someone has what it takes to be a true SEAL. 3 targets at 100 yards. You get 3 shots total. All 3 must hit the kill zone, which for this stage is only 4 inches in diameter. Oh, and there's one more thing. He paused, letting the silence stretch out. You'll be shooting in the prone position, but you won't be using the standard rifle rest. You'll be using these. He held up a pair of unstable sandbags, the kind that shifted and moved with every breath. And just to make it interesting, you'll have exactly 30 seconds to take all 3 shots. The crowd erupted in disbelief, even for an expert marksman. This was nearly impossible. 3 precision shots at 100 yards with an unstable platform in 30 seconds. Most of the SEALs present couldn't do it, and they've been training for years. That's insane, someone muttered from the crowd. That's the point, Morrison replied coldly. The kid says he can beat everyone here. Well, this is his chance to prove it. He turned to Ethan, who had been standing silently throughout the entire explanation. Any questions, Candide Cole? Just one, sir, Ethan replied. What's the current course record? Morrison's smile widened. The course record is held by me. 48 out of 50 possible hits, with a total time of 11 minutes and 47 seconds. That record has stood for 15 years. 48 out of 50. Ethan repeated thoughtfully. That's impressive, sir. Damn right it is, Morrison snapped. And before you get any ideas, the second best score in history was 44 out of 50. No one has ever come close to my record. No one. I see, Ethan said simply. His face showed no emotion, no fear, no bravado, just calm. Acceptance? Torres, issue the candidate a weapon, Morrison ordered. Standard M4, Carbine, standard ammunition, no special equipment, no modifications. If this kid is as good as he thinks he is, he won't need any advantages. Sergeant Major Torres handed Ethan an M4 carbine, the standard weapon of the US military. It was a reliable, accurate rifle, but it was also completely unfamiliar to Ethan. Or so everyone assumed. What they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that Ethan had been preparing for this moment his entire life, but not in the way anyone might expect. Ethan took the rifle, his hands moving with practiced ease as he checked the weapon. His movements were fluid and confident, the actions of someone who had handled firearms thousands of times before. He checked the chamber, inspected the barrel, tested the trigger pull. It took him less than 10 seconds. But in those 10 seconds, several of the more observant instructors noticed something that gave them pause. The kid knew what he was doing, at least with the weapon handling. Range is hot. Torres bellowed. All personnel behind the safety line. Candidate. Call approach stage 1. When ready. The crowd pressed forward, eager to watch the impending disaster. Bets were already being whispered about how many targets the kid would miss, with most people guessing he'd be lucky to qualify on even the first stage. Colonel Morrison stood front and center, arms crossed, that superior smirk still plastered on his face. He was going to enjoy this. Every single second. Ethan walked to the first shooting station with measured steps. He positioned himself at the bench rest, settling the rifle against his shoulder with practiced ease. The first stage was straightforward. 10 stationary targets at 50 yards. For someone with Ethan's background, it should have been simple. But the crowd didn't know about his background. They didn't know about the thousands of hours he'd spent training in his grandfather's private range. They didn't know about the retired Marine Corps sniper who had been drilling fundamentals into him since he was 8 years old. They didn't know about the natural talent that had manifested the first time he picked up a rifle. The almost supernatural ability to read wind, distance, and environmental conditions. They didn't know any of that. They just saw a 17-year-old kid who was about to embarrass himself. Candidate Coley, you may begin on my mark, Torres announced. He raised his stopwatch. Ready. Set. The sharp crack of the M4 carbine echoed across the range, followed immediately by another, then another. The shots came in a rhythm that seemed almost musical in its precision. One shot every 4 seconds. Methodical and unhurt. Colonel Morrison's smirk faltered slightly. The kid's form was ... Good. Very good, actually. His cheek weld was perfect. His breathing controlled. His trigger pulls smooth. But form meant nothing if you couldn't hit the targets. Ceasefire. Torres called after exactly 40 seconds had elapsed. Ethan had taken all 10 shots with time to spare. The range safety officer, a grizzled chief petty officer named Matthews, moved forward with binoculars to spot the targets. His job was to call out the hits and misses. The crowd fell silent, waiting for the inevitable report of multiple misses. Matthews raised his binoculars, scanning the first target, then the second, then the third. His expression didn't change, but his hand lowered slowly. He moved to get a better angle, checking each target carefully. Then he turned back to the crowd, his weathered face showing something that might have been surprise. 10 for 10, he announced flatly. All hits en masse. Kill zone. For a moment, nobody reacted. It was as if the words didn't compute. Then the murmuring started, rippling through the crowd like a wave. Lucky, someone said. Beginner's luck. The first stage is the easiest. Another voice chimed in. Wait until he has to move. But a few of the more experienced shooters exchanged glances. Perfect accuracy on the first stage. Wasn't that unusual? But the time caught their attention. Ethan had completed the stage in 40 seconds. The minimum time was 2 minutes. He'd finished in 1/3 of the allotted time and hadn't missed a single shot. Colonel Morrison's jaw tightened. Stage 2, he ordered. Let's see how he handles rapid acquisition. Stage 2 was a different beast entirely. 20 targets at varying distances, appearing at random intervals. The shooter had to quickly identify the target, estimate the range, adjust aim, and fire, all while managing their ammunition and time. It was chaotic by design, meant to simulate the sensory overload of actual combat. Ethan moved to the Stage 2 position, a standing platform with barriers on 3 sides. The targets would pop up at different locations, staying visible for only a few seconds before dropping back down. Miss your window, and that target wouldn't appear again. This is where he falls apart. Morrison predicted quietly to Torres. The first stage was just fundamentals. This requires real skill, Torres nodded, but there was a thoughtful look in his eyes. Did you see his time on stage 1, sir? 40 seconds. That's faster than I've ever shot it. Speed means nothing if you can't maintain it, Morrison replied. Watch. The pressure will get to him now. Candidate Cole, Reedy Torres, called out. Ready, Sergeant Major? Ethan replied. His voice was still calm, almost eerily so. His breathing was controlled, his stance balanced. If he felt any pressure, he wasn't showing it. 3 minutes on the clock. Begin. The first target popped up at 25 yards to Ethan's left. His response was instantaneous. The rifle swung up, and he fired in what seemed like a single fluid motion. The target dropped before most observers had even registered where it had appeared. Another target, this one at 60 yards straight ahead. Ethan had already transitioned, his aim point adjusted for the increased distance. Crack. The target fell. Then things got chaotic. Targets began appearing rapidly. Sometimes 2 or 3 visible at once. The shooter had to prioritize, decide which target to engage first, manage their ammunition, and keep track of which targets they'd already hit. Ethan moved like water, flowing from target to target with impossible fluidity. There was no hesitation, no wasted movement. His rifle seemed to move of its own accord, seeking targets with predatory precision. The shots came in a steady drumbeat. Crack, 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 crack. He's just spraying, someone in the crowd insisted. No way he's actually hitting them all. But the targets kept falling. 15 yards to the right. Hit. 75 yards center mass. Hit. 40 yards at an angle. Hit. Every target that appeared, Ethan engaged and eliminated with mechanical efficiency. Colonel Morrison wasn't smirking anymore. His eyes were locked on Ethan, watching every movement, every shot. Something was wrong. This wasn't beginner's luck. This was skill. Real, undeniable skill. Cease fire. Torres called. Ethan had fired his last shot at the 2-minute and 10-second mark. 50 seconds under the maximum time. Chief Matthews was already moving forward with his binoculars. The crowd pressed closer, everyone wanting to hear the results. Even the candidates who had been mocking Ethan earlier were silent now, a creeping sense of unease settling over them. Matthews took his time, checking each target carefully. His expression remained neutral, professional. But when he finally turned back to the crowd, there was a slight edge in his voice that hadn't been there before. 24-20, he announced. All hits kill zone, 0 misses. The silence that followed was deafening. 20 out of 20. Perfect accuracy. Undertimed at wasn't just good, that was exceptional. That was the kind of performance you'd expect from a seasoned operator, not a 17-year-old kid nobody had ever heard of. There's no way. Someone breathed. Check them again, Colonel Morrison ordered sharply. Double-check every single target. Matthews nodded and walked the range again, taking even more time to inspect each target. The crowd waited, the tension building with each passing second. Some people were starting to realize that something extraordinary might be happening. Others were in denial, refusing to believe what they were seeing. Finally, Matthews returned. Confirmed. Sir, 24-20. Perfect score on stage 2. The murmuring grew louder. People were pulling out phones, checking if there was some record of this Ethan Cole. Who was he? Where had he come from? How had someone this young gotten this good without anyone knowing about it? Ethan stood at ease, the rifle held comfortably in his hands. He wasn't celebrating, wasn't showing off. His expression remained neutral, focused. He was treating this like just another day at the range. Stage 3, Colonel Morrison's voice cut through the noise like a blade. His face was flushed now, but whether from anger or embarrassment, it was hard to tell. Torres, set it up. Now, sir, shouldn't we give the candidate a brief rest period? Torres suggested. Standard protocol is 5 minutes between stages. Did the candidate request a rest period? Morrison snapped. All eyes turned to Ethan, who simply shook his head. I'm ready to continue, sir. There you have it, Morrison said coldly. Stage 3. Let's see how he handles movement. But even as he gave the order, a small voice in the back of Colonel Morrison's mind was starting to whisper something he didn't want to hear. What if this kid is the real deal? Stage 3 was where dreams of becoming a Navy SEAL went to die. The course was 100 yards long, winding through barriers, walls, and obstacles that required shooters to constantly move, think, and shoot simultaneously. 20 targets were scattered throughout, at unknown distances and angles. Some were partially concealed behind cover. Others were at extreme angles that required unconventional shooting positions. All of them demanded split-second decisions while maintaining tactical awareness and firearm safety. The average completion time for experienced candidates was just under 4.5 minutes, with most scoring between 16 and 18 hits out of 20 possible. Any score below 16 was an automatic failure. Any safety violation was an immediate disqualification and removal from the program. This stage simulates real-world combat movement, Sergeant Major Torres explained, though his words were more for the crowd than for Ethan. You'll be moving through a hostile environment, engaging multiple threats while maintaining cover and tactical discipline. Your heart rate will elevate. Your fine motor skills will degrade. This is where we see who can actually perform under combat conditions. Ethan surveyed the course with calm, analytical eyes. He was plotting his route, identifying potential target locations, calculating angles and distances. It took him exactly 15 seconds, and then he nodded. "I'm ready, Sergeant Major." Colonel Morrison pushed his way to the front of the crowd. "Before you begin," he sighed loudly, ensuring everyone could hear, "I want to remind everyone watching that this isn't just about accuracy. This is about tactical movement, proper use of cover, and demonstrating combat awareness. Even if Candidate Cole hits every target, if his tactics are sloppy, if he exposes himself unnecessarily, if he violates any safety protocols, he fails." "Understood." "Yes, sir," Ethan replied. "And one more thing," Morrison added, his voice dripping with condescension. "Try not to hurt yourself out there, kid. These obstacles are designed for full-grown men." A few chuckles rippled through the crowd, but they were nervous now, uncertain. The earlier mockery had faded, replaced by something else. Anticipation, curiosity, maybe even hope. 5 minutes on the clock, Torres announced. "Candidate Cole, you may begin on my mark." He raised his stopwatch. "Ready? ... Begin." Ethan exploded into motion. There was no other word for it. One moment he was standing still, and the next he was moving with a speed and grace that seemed impossible for someone his size. He flowed toward the first obstacle, a low concrete barrier, and dropped into a tactical crouch behind it in one smooth motion. The first target appeared to his right, partially concealed behind a steel plate at 30 yards. Ethan's rifle came up, his body position perfect, and he fired. The target rang with the distinctive sound of a center mass hit, but he was already moving again, transitioning to the next position before the echo of his shot had faded. He vaulted over a low wall with one hand, his rifle maintained in the other, and landed in a stable shooting position on the far side. 2 targets visible from this position, one at 45 yards, one at 20. The closer target was an immediate threat. Ethan engaged it first, then smoothly transitioned to the farther target. 2 shots, 2 hits, maybe a second and a half between them. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Ethan moved through the course like a ghost. His movements weren't just efficient, they were beautiful. Every step had purpose. Every position provided cover. Every target was engaged from a stable, supported position. He made it look effortless, like a choreographed dance rather than a grueling combat simulation. "Watch his magazine management," someone whispered. It was one of the SEAL instructors, a veteran of multiple combat deployments. "He's counting his rounds. See? He just transitioned to a new magazine before moving to the next position. That's veteran-level discipline." Indeed, Ethan wasn't just shooting and moving randomly. He was thinking 3 steps ahead, planning his route to ensure he always had ammunition when he needed it, always had cover when he reloaded, always maintained tactical advantage. He slid behind a vehicle mock-up, using the engine block for cover. 3 targets were visible from this position, arranged in increasing distances, 25, 50, and 75 yards. Standard protocol was to engage them in order of distance. Starting with the closest threat, Ethan engaged them in reverse order. The logic was brilliant and became clear immediately. By starting with the farthest target first, he could fire all 3 shots from essentially the same position, making minute adjustments rather than large ones. It was a technique used by expert marksmen to maintain consistency, but it required absolute confidence in your ability to make the long shot while under stress. 3 shots, 3 hits, maybe 2 seconds total. Colonel Morrison's hands had curled into fists. His record was 48 out of 50 hits total across all stages. This kid was on track for a perfect score. He's going to gas out, Morrison muttered to Torres. The course takes a toll. His legs will give out. His arms will start shaking. Just wait. But Ethan wasn't slowing down. If anything, he seemed to be accelerating. He moved through the course with machine-like precision, each obstacle overcome, each target engaged and eliminated. His breathing remained controlled, his movements fluid. It was like watching someone who had run this exact course 1,000 times before, who knew every inch of it by heart. 75 seconds into the stage, Ethan reached the most difficult section of the course. A narrow corridor with targets at both ends and obstacles in the middle. The tactical problem was clear. You were in a fatal funnel, exposed from multiple angles. Most candidates slowed down significantly here, taking their time to carefully clear each section. Ethan accelerated. He sprinted into the corridor at full speed, firing on the move. The first target took a round to center mass. Ethan leaped over a barrier without breaking stride, rotated his body midair, and fired at a target behind him that most candidates didn't even know existed. He landed, rolled, came up in a kneeling position, and engaged 2 more targets in rapid succession. All hits. The entire sequence took less than 4 seconds. Did you see that? Someone gasped. He shot a target behind him while jumping. That's not possible, another voice insisted. Nobody can do that. But Ethan had just done it, and he was already moving to the final section of the course. The last 5 targets were arranged in a wicked pattern, designed to force the shooter into awkward positions. One required shooting under a barrier from a prone position. Another required shooting through a narrow gap while standing. A third was positioned to force the shooter to lean around cover at an uncomfortable angle. Ethan read the entire setup in an instant and attacked it with methodical precision. Prone position, shot under the barrier, hit up. 2 standing shot through the gap, hit up. Transition to the awkward lean, compensate for body position, fire, hit. 18 targets down, 2 to go. The final 2 targets were the cruelest part of the course. They were positioned at opposite ends of the final stretch, 75 yards apart. To engage both meant either backtracking, which would eat up precious time, or taking extremely difficult shots from non-standard positions. Ethan found a third option. He moved to the center point between the 2 targets and dropped into a sitting position, using a modified rice paddy stance that very few Western shooters even knew about. From this position, he could engage both targets by rotating his upper body without moving his lower body. First target, 75 yards to the left. He rotated, acquired, fired. Hit. Second target, 75 yards to the right. Rotate, acquire, fire, hit. Clear, Ethan called out, standing and making his weapons safe. The range fell completely silent. Even the wind seemed to have stopped. Chief Matthews moved forward with his binoculars, but there was no real suspense this time. Everyone had watched it happen. They'd all seen it. 24-20, Matthews called out, and his voice held something new now. Respect. All hits, kill zone. All tactical movements proper. No safety violations. Then Torres looked down at his stopwatch and blinked, certain he must have made an error. He checked it again, then looked at his backup timer. Both showed the same thing. Time, he announced, and his voice cracked slightly. 2 minutes, 37 seconds. The crowd erupted, not in laughter this time, but in shocked, with exclamations and disbelief. 2 minutes and 37 seconds. The course record was 3 minutes and 52 seconds, held by a SEAL Team 6 operator who had since retired. Ethan had just shattered that record by over a minute. That's impossible, someone insisted. The course can't be run that fast. It's physically impossible. But Ethan had just done the impossible, and he was standing there calmly, breathing just slightly elevated, waiting for the next stage. Colonel Morrison stood frozen, his face pale. His earlier smirk was long gone, replaced by something that might have been shock, or might have been the dawning realization that he had drastically, catastrophically misjudged this situation. "Stage 4, he said, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "Set up, Stage 4. The crowd's energy had shifted dramatically. What had started as a spectacle, an opportunity to watch a cocky kid get his comeuppance, had transformed into something else entirely. People were no longer laughing. They were leaning forward, eyes fixed on Ethan with an intensity usually reserved for witnessing history being made, because that's exactly what they were witnessing. Stage 4 was nicknamed the Breaker for good reason. By the time candidates reached this point in the qualification, they were exhausted. Their arms felt like lead. Their legs trembled from the exertion of Stage 3. Their hands shook. And then, just to make sure they were thoroughly miserable, the instructors made it worse. 40 push-ups. 40 mountain climbers, all performed at maximum speed, all designed to spike your heart rate, flood your system with adrenaline, and turn your fine motor control into a distant memory. And then, while you're gasping for breath and your vision is swimming, you're expected to make precise, accurate shots on multiple targets. It was cruel by design. Combat was cruel. If you couldn't perform while exhausted, while in pain, while your body was screaming at you to stop, then you didn't belong in the SEALs. Candidate Cole Sergeant Major Torres called out. "Before you begin Stage 4, I need to ask, if you want to take your permitted rest, period, you're entitled to 10 minutes between Stage 3 and Stage 4. It was a courtesy, and a necessary one. Pushing through without rest was possible, but it made an already difficult stage nearly impossible. Every single candidate took the rest, period. Everyone. "Thank you, Sergeant Major, but I'll continue," Ethan replied. A murmur ran through the crowd. The kid was either supremely confident or completely insane. Maybe both. Colonel Morrison seized on this decision like a drowning man grabbing a life preserver. "You hear that?" he announced loudly. "The candidate is waiving his rest period. Remember that, when he fails this stage, pride comes before the fall." But even as he said it, Morrison didn't sound convinced. How could he be? He'd just watched this 17-year-old kid do things that seasoned operators will.